Hey, Emily.
Hi, Kate. How are you today?
I'm great. I wanted to talk a little bit about Brazil and our Brazil tour. So, UnivAssist has been doing recruitment in Brazil for 12 years now this year, and you have been a part of it since the very beginning. And I've had the pleasure of traveling with you and co-leading these tours for the last 8 years. And so I think that we're in a really good place to talk about what is the unique engagement opportunity for universities in Brazil with us and how your extremely wonderful and in-depth knowledge in the region can help universities. So, do you want to start out just by who are you? What's your background in the region?
I've been down there for 21 years, Kate. Luckily, a majority of those have been spent with you. And I've worked at several different schools. And then when I finally, in several different capacities, classroom teacher, college counselor, administrator. And then along the way, I was always doing the KIC tours, right? Because the landscape has changed down there a lot in the last decade or two. And so part of the idea of creating something when we first started with KIC in Brazil was let's make it a little bit pedagogical. Let's learn the landscape a little bit more. Let's tailor it because the growth was already starting to appear. And I think that's one of the unique aspects of it is that we've been able to track it over time and we've really grown this amazing community. And one of the important things to remember, as with other countries as well, is Latin America is very high touch. So when you come to a place like Brazil, it's real important that you're getting into the scene and you're immersing yourself. So having actual on campus school visits can really change the dial of interest versus actual applications versus actual yield. And we've grown great partners throughout the years. Education USA, like we're going in there and we're front loading information, or I'm always on the ground answering questions or doing follow up. This is the fun part, right? There's nothing about it that is like you go to a school and that's it. There's always a continuation. And I love that KIC has backed that model up for so long. And I love that even through the growth, we have been able to keep our finger on the pulse.
Right.
And part of that is really cool. We have that WhatsApp group, Kate, that we love that has like 200 Brazilian educators in it. So it's like a daily, constant source of information. And I think while there's a lot of great opportunities for people to travel and you got to explore them all, like once you do a KIC, there's no going back to the same level of immersion.
I think it's really important to pull out the fact that you partner so closely with Education USA. And they are, I would say, we have an Education USA representative at the majority of the school visits that we do.
Mhm.
And that's not only beneficial for US institutions, but it's also beneficial for institutions that are traveling with us from other countries, from Europe, from Canada, from wherever, because Education USA is able to hit some of those baseline points. And then by the time
For
the
sure.
students are talking to the universities, they're able to have much more knowledgeable conversations and they're able to figure out what are the real ways that I can get the most out of this interaction with this university. And the fact that you are there on the ground year round, as you said, talking to these counselors and interacting with these schools and following up with them, it's not something that, like you said, you can't just go and then it stops and then that's it, right? It has
Right.
to be a continuation throughout. And one other thing you mentioned, which I think was great, was that you said the landscape has changed so much in the last 20 years since
Mhm.
you've been there. Can you give just a little snapshot of what has changed? How has it changed?
So historically speaking, the caveat to work with KIC right before you started coming on the tour, Kate, was always like, okay, let's hit those national schools too. Because there's a real disconnect between understanding how and why and what national schools did with internationalization, right? But now it's booming. And so KIC has always been like, okay, we'll get in there, we'll help them. These are private schools with great kids that have the finances to study abroad. And since the beginning, KIC has been like, okay, we're going to envelop them and bring them into the fold. And so as they're growing, we're working with these great students. And what we've seen now is a few different big aspects that we talk a lot more about at orientation. But large educational companies have purchased different school systems, and those are great to know about. How do those function? How do we network our way through those? How are they different from a a single standing private school, which schools are going to stay with national curriculum, which schools are going to go IB, which schools are going to be AP, and what level of international department help support do they have? So, one of the things that I love about doing the KIC is when I'm on the ground all the time and talking to these folks, we know what they need before we go in. So we get to plan these tailored events where you're going in and counseling. You're not just going in there and recruiting, and you're just building these relationships, because that's the memory that you have. It's who was that one university that came in and explained to me how financial aid worked. Maybe I want to go to that university if they're so
100%.
open
Yeah.
about it.
Yeah.
And I think there's something special about that. And again, there's different recruitment measures for everybody, but I think anybody that's new to Brazil or Latin America or other places where KIC might work, there's something very important about starting there, but always coming back every once in a while to reconvene with that level of information that we try to have throughout all of our leaderships on the ground, and to be able to talk about that growth and changes and the strategies, right? Hey, Emily, here's my one pager. These are the cities I'm going to with KIC. What do I need to focus on? Great. Let's have that conversation, because truly it does change a little bit and we do need to talk about it. And that's one way that we can help out.
I keep remembering this term you coined a few years ago in orientation. I remember you said, "Oh, I'm your carry-on counselor."
Carry on, Counselor.
And I
Yeah.
love that because it's so true. It is not only are you there throughout the year interacting with the students and the schools, but you're able to give this really insider perspective to the universities that are traveling with us because you have been a counselor, you have been a principal, you've been in these schools for 20 years, and you are so plugged into the system that you're able to give that insight of this one cheater will work well in national schools, but maybe not international, and here's why. And all of those really regional specific insights that I think make a really big difference. Why does region specific expertise actually matter in terms of recruitment outcomes?
I think that one thing people realize once they come to Brazil is it's a vast country. It's the size of the US. Who you're recruiting and what you're saying in Fortaleza is different than what you're saying down in Porto Alegre. And to be able to have these, especially at orientation, these city specific or region specific conversations really change how you understand how to recruit and how to diversify. This is such a big keyword these days, is what's diverse. And that may look a little bit different to everybody, but is diversity picking somebody from Salvador? Is it looking more at a national school kid? Is it looking at an IB kid that's a third culture kid? So all of this information together is really helpful. And I love that if we start early enough when we do all the signups for KIC, that we get to have those conversations, those pre-orientation, and we can just go on about it and just make it a trip that blows your mind. And all of a sudden you're walking out going, God, I really have a new understanding of recruitment in Brazil, or where I need to look more, or what I need to look more for. Because again, we're having these constant conversations every day, and that's what we bring to the table. And I think it's so important for you to know your audience and to figure out how to match up with these kids.
Looking back at the dozen years that you've been co-leading these Brazil tours for us, is there any moment that stands out to you that you can remember where either your insights were able to make a real tangible, like immediate difference for how a university was recruiting? Either you gave them advice on the ground or maybe ahead of time, or what have you noticed in terms of universities that keep coming back with us? Because there are quite a few who come back with us either twice a year for every tour or at least once a year. Have you noticed that how their interactions or outcomes have changed at all based on kind of the availability of this insight that they're getting on a regular basis?
If after a couple trips, these are people that are coming back and basically helping out at orientation, right? Because they've got a sense of how it works and what's worked for them. You know that somebody's learned something when they're able to teach it back. And I feel like the return veterans over years of KIC travel are able to come in and teach it out, which is amazing. I also feel like those are the kids that we hear from the most that are super happy on campus because they feel really heard and seen. And I'm not talking about the small campuses too. I'm talking some of the big public flagships that have traveled with us have been able to capture that warmth, that Brazilian warmth. And we're hearing kids going, I'm loving X university. And it hasn't usually been a state or a place that's on the radar, and all of a sudden it's on the radar. And that's one of the things about Brazil is you get one or two kids to go, and then they're doing the recruiting
Yeah.
for you, right? So that's one part. The other part is being able to help schools build out their identity. That's been a really powerful piece where universities have come in and said, if you do this to your transcript, I'm going to understand it better. And this is where Education USA, even though we have the USA on the end, is like they're helping with translations, they're helping build profiles, they're on the ground watching the growth and knowing which cities are going where and when they're ready to have visits. Such a powerful way to understand how to support and what our different roles could be in giving support. And just random success stories. We visited schools up in the Northeast, which is a growing, booming gem of a place to
And
go.
very untouched as well.
Right. Untapped. And we, there was a school up there that was a public school that didn't really know how to contextualize themselves or their students. And this kid walked away with a full scholarship. So helping the school later figure out how to talk about its students, how to identify itself was awesome. And that was just one of those joint collaborations that turned out in the best interest for this kid. And things like that are magic. And they happen all the time on different levels through KIC. I think every year, every tour, we could pick something where we're like, whoa,
Yeah.
that was really cool. And that happened because we all did something together.
Yeah. And one thing that I've noticed too over the years is because universities, obviously, there's this perception that universities, at least in the US on the coasts, do really well, or maybe universities like in specific countries in Europe do really well that Brazilians are interested in. It's been interesting to see that go so far beyond what you'd expect because of the effort and the insight that some of these university representatives are bringing and what they're learning from you and through their experience on the ground with us that are doing really well in terms of student outreach and not
Yeah.
only application increases, but enrollment increases too. And it's because they are putting the blood, sweat, and tears into it, right? It's great to see that growth and to see it in places that you don't necessarily, you wouldn't expect.
Yeah. And that's what you want though too, right? You want to be
Yes.
able to empower people to do the work. And I think it's more rewarding for reps on the ground. But another thing I appreciate about having done this for so long with KIC is like pick the cities that you want to go to, hop on, come to Counselor
Yeah.
HQ if that's what you want to do. If your budgets are low, let's throw together a virtual event with 7
Yes.
schools under this network. There's so many ways to reach these kids in just the pathways that have been built together that I think there's something there for everybody.
Yes, and we've been emphasizing best fit for all these years with students, and that's why I think we've been really lucky. I don't know how it's worked out, but it always works out where we have such a great diversity of institutions on
Yeah.
our, so it's not like you have 10 versions of the same large public school. We have a lot of diversity in terms of having small privates and large publics and maybe a few discipline specific schools like art schools or engineering schools or aviation schools and from different countries and from different parts of the country and the world. And not only is that great for students because then they're able to really go beyond the sort of, oh, I heard about this one, so I'm going to go there, but really get in what is the best fit for me. But we've also been able to do that on the reverse for institutions, which is we know that whatever tour we put together isn't necessarily going to be the 100% best fit for your budget and for your strategy and all of that, but you can pick and choose and use the pieces and use our efforts and energy on the ground to work for you and have that help move your strategy forward in a way that makes the most sense for you.
Yeah, and I think it's important to note it may feel to some universities like there's this lack of applications. That's not what we're seeing in Brazil. And
Mm.
most of Latin America, like we're still going at greater numbers than we ever were. We're expanding where we want to go.
Yes,
US is still popular. Non-US is hugely
yes,
popular too. And what I like about the tailoring that we've developed over the years is everybody gets their time on the stage. If there's a bunch of global universities on the tour, we're having a global panel. If you need to
hmm,
learn how to do walk through the Common App, we're doing Common App walkthrough. So there's a place for everybody, right? To teach, to counsel. And it makes a difference, right? You just see the kids' faces light up afterwards. You hear from the counselors afterwards, wow, they really get it. And now they're really excited. And that's what you want to do is drive that excitement into momentum
yes.
so that they're carrying it and they're coming back and they're ending up applying. And that's really what it takes is going beyond just a fair Let's share our brochures. Let's share our knowledge.
Yeah, and that really leads into my next question, which was, what's the difference in deciding to travel with us, with you and me, and on the UnivAssist tour versus just coming into Brazil and doing a big generic fair or maybe doing a circuit on your own? What do you think the benefit is of traveling with us?
I think that we're willing to have hard conversations. I'm willing to have hard conversations about we're bringing a group. Can we make sure the kids' English is okay? Can we make sure their finances are okay? That happens. But that's why I love KIC, because it's like, all right, but if that all doesn't fit together, there's virtual fairs
Yeah.
or there's hop on cities. And I
Mhm.
think it's so important, transparency. The college process can really be confusing already. And there's a lot of pressure that we can take off just by being transparent. And so having some filters on so you know what you're stepping into is great. Of course, just like going to college, it's not going to be 100% match. There's going to be some challenges or difficulties, but the vast majority of it is like, wow, this is a really good positive experience. And this is what I want to see. And these are the types of kids I want to come sit on my campus for the next 3 or 4 years. And I feel like people leave the tour with the thoughts like, oh, yeah, I can always tap in or dial in next week and do something else. And the information is always there for them. And that's a feel good feeling. That's, I went and made a difference and I can follow up. And I think that follow up, especially in our country, is so important.
And
And
I've seen, yeah,
I don't see public fairs doing that. And you just have to pick and choose what's right for you. And
you do, yeah. And it comes down to, do you want to be one of 100 or 200 other universities handing out brochures in a big room, or do you want to be able to actually leave the country with having built real relationships and having made real connections with people like you who they're able to WhatsApp at any point during the year and say, "Hey, can I pick your brain about X?" and actually get a response and get
yeah,
real insight that makes a difference in their outreach.
I agree with you, because if you're talking about a full time degree granting program, it's not just a brochure. At some schools, maybe because they have wonderful counselors, but we have to remember that a lot of these countries we travel to, there are international schools, and then there's a band of phenomenal national schools there that make up the majority.
Yes.
Right. And we got to make sure we know how to talk to them and reach out to them. That's a different audience with different resources and different support. So we have to adapt to that. And you're not coming in selling a language program or a summer school program. That's a brochure. Right. But longer programs are longer conversations.
Yep, and we want to make it worth everybody's time. And we touched on this a little bit, but can you talk a little bit about the kinds of schools that we choose to visit and maybe even how does that shift based on what we're seeing and hearing from universities in their recruitment strategies? If you look back 12 years ago when we first started, one of the strongest goals that we had, both for you and for us as UnivAssist, was to really break into those national schools, right? And to give them the opportunity not only for the universities to meet these wonderful students, but also for the students to be able to meet universities as well and to help build the counselor knowledge. And how that sort of changed and kept expanding, as you have rightly pointed out over the years of, we don't just go, if you come with us in September and then you come with us again in March, you're not going to be visiting the same 20 schools again,
Mm.
right? Some of them will be the same, but a lot of them will be different. And so how do you choose which schools to visit and engage with?
I think part of having this ongoing network through the Caribbean and Latin American network and that Brazil network is we have honest conversations. So we're saying, and we're watching stuff too. We're watching immigration changes and student visa changes and all of that. And we're having those conversations. And I'll give you a perfect example. It's come up in conversation recently that students going to the US may have to prove 4 years of finances and not just one. And so we've had enough conversations with schools where some schools may be at this point like, not a good year to host because we only have 2 or 3 students that could show 4 years of finances. Let's wait and see if that rule or policy changes. And then let's try it again, or let's try a virtual instead so that everybody's time is managed well and efficiently. Tough conversations and transparency. And that's what happens when we launch dates and we start talking and people come to us and say, we're a school we'd love to host. Okay, what's it looking like for you? Do we need to talk about these things? Are you looking for global universities as well? We try to match it up as best we can. But what I love too is we give them advice throughout the year. So maybe it's not this time, it's next semester or next year. Or maybe, how about you come train your counselor with us at the counselor HQ? So your counselor has a whole year to get ready for us to come. So there's so many things going on that are just constant resources and teamwork. I feel like, I hate to say it, but I feel like we can't really go wrong. We've got you covered no matter what side of the desk
Yes,
you're on. And that's
right.
something I'm really proud about.
Yeah.
Something I'm really proud about.
And that may transition into my last question, which I saved because it's the best question.
Oh,
What
where
has
do you find the pound occasional? I know what this
no.
question is, Kate. I already know. I know how you are.
Yes, that is a great question. Yeah, that's a very important learning on the Brazil tour and insight that you
Yeah. An
received.
introduction to Brazilian food. I gotcha.
This is true. So, Emily, you are undeniably not only a well-respected resource and leader in the counseling, college counseling, general education space in Brazil, and you have been for many years, well-respected, well-known, even award-winning. So, it's true.
Takes a team. It takes a team, though. It takes a village.
Why you are so experienced and fantastic at what you do. Why is it that you keep working with us over 12 years and continuing?
Other than your awesome fashion sense, Kate, that I can steal every time we're together, I think it's because, no, I know why it is actually. It's definitely because we've rolled with the punches and there's room to be creative and there's room for teamwork. KIC does an excellent job at being people, just not just a business, but people. I think that resonates well with the region and I'm sure with all the other regions you work with too. But there's something about keeping the education inside an educational business. And that often gets neglected. And we've always been really big on, let's make this pedagogical. Let's use the classroom teacher, college counseling ideas. Let's make it what's your phrase? Not transactional,
Yes, it's relational, not
relational,
transactional.
right? Which is true. We say it or it's written places, but really we're acting that out all the time. All the time. And the other thing is, I laugh when you say awards and well respected, but I stand on the shoulder of giants down here. When I say there's a network down here, this is probably one of the strongest regional networks you'll find anywhere. And so every recognition, everything we've done really comes from 2 decades of teamwork and
Mhm.
people stepping up and taking care of stuff and building city networks and making that logistically easier for visitors. And it's just endless. It just feels like an unstoppable force of educators that are truly into maintaining the heart of education. And a lot of that comes from collaboration.
I love it. Thank you, Emily.
No, happy to do it anytime.